for joining us. I'm Saya Rankin. I'm going to do the moderating. And first, we're going to have Laura Dern come on out. And then we have our writer, director, also actor, Bradley Cooper, and E.T. Hello.
Hey.
So one thing that I've been thinking about as I think about this movie is, do you think that a lot of people are going to now flood the Comedy Cellar trying to do?
Well, they'd be in trouble because there's no open mic night at the Cellar.
Correct.
That was the one fictional thing we did. Actually, the Cellar is a place where people like work years and years to do it, but we love the production, the production value of it. The fact that there's this little cellar. And then there's the olive tree up top. So that was the one fictional thing that we did, and that's why we cast those great 4 comedians to play have fictional names to be the open micers. But everybody else that was there, if we went there tonight, 80% of who you see in the movie would be there. Dave Attell would be I guarantee you smoking a cigarette outside the Cellar right now in the Table Street.
Yeah, it's what is it, 9 something there? So okay, let's take it back. And speaking of authenticity, I'm sure you've. Most people probably know this, but can you talk about the real gentleman who inspired this story? And we'll take some of Will Arnett's story. He's not able to be here, so we'll tell it for him. How he, I guess, just overheard him telling kind of a version of, I went on stage at an open mic night. And
he met him on a barge in Amsterdam or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that part of barge in Amsterdam.
Yeah. I don't know any specifics. He just keeps saying that at the Q&As. But when I was in the middle of doing a movie and I was asking, Will and I have been friends for like 25 years. We used to live in Venice, California together as young actors, and I was just asking what he was up to, and he was talking about developing a movie based on, or inspired, I think it was more based on John at that point, John Bishop, who's a comedian who now sells out the O2 Arena and has a huge career as a stand-up comic. But his life, what happened to him was he had broken up with his wife, went into a bar one night, didn't want to pay the cover, put his name down so he didn't have to pay, and then went up on stage and just all of a sudden started talking about his imminent divorce. That actually happened, and then months later, his estranged wife came into a comedy club / bar with her girlfriends, and he was up there doing an open mic night talking about her. And then they wound up getting back together, and now they're still married. So those 2 factual parts, if we had written that, you'd be like, well, that's a little bit too much. But so that was kind of gold. And he was developing it with Mark Chappell, a writer for Searchlight in UK. It was more a movie about stand-up comedy, but then I couldn't get the image out of my head of him on stage, and I love his voice, and he's such a great actor that I don't feel I ever had the opportunity to do something like this. And I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And then I was like, do you think there's a way that maybe I could direct it, maybe take a crack at like maybe rewriting it and see what you guys think? And then that's how it all started.
And then, how did you 2 meet? You guys have known each other for a long time as well, right?
Yeah.
What's the actual origin story?
What is the origin story? Can we talk about it?
Anesthetize it a smidgen for us.
We've been very close for many years.
We were married.
It was complicated, much like this film. And then
It's based on our story. But we have been friends for like 15 years. It's funny because people said like, we never worked together, but Laura, first of all, is such an incredible writer herself, and if I'm betting, she's going to direct a movie in the next 5 years, I would say. Yeah. So I've always gone to her for everything. Yes, starting with Stars Born and Maestro, and so we've always been dear friends. But then when the movie shifted to be a movie like, what if we make a movie about the need for communication, and in our intimate relationships, and in order to do that, me thinking about is like, if I'm pursuing something that's demanding of me, that's asking me to be myself in an uncomfortable, potentially uncomfortable situation, and if I'm doing that, if I'm in the process of growing, then that aids my intimate relationships. And I was like, this stand-up comedy is the perfect foil for that. And the minute that sort of came into mind, I was like, so then Tess has to be this incredible character. And I was sharing with Laura what we always share we were doing, and then it was like, and also Laura's very tall, And that actually was an element of it. So I thought, oh, would it be interesting if she was coming down the mountain? She was a professional athlete. She's already hit the summit. And he just discovers this mountain that he didn't even know was there. And it was like, oh, and then what if she's volleyball and a striker? And I just kept talking to Laura before I'd written that whole part of it. And luckily she signed on to do it. And then we really made it together. And that's why I feel like I'm so excited about Tess. And really there was no movie until Laura said yes. It was like if she said no, we were in trouble.
At what point during these conversations when it starts out like the way your normal creative collaborations are, right? Sharing things back and forth. At what point did you, Laura, realize, wait, oh, I think now I'm like talking my way into a job or like into this movie?
He was looking at me in his kitchen describing this. And just, I remember looking in my eyes at one point, like, dude, no, it's you. And I was thinking he meant sort of, inspirations of conversations we've had about relationship. And so I remember sort of the conversation being about, yeah, of course, it's a piece of me, it's a piece of you, talking about the character. He's like, no, you should play this part. So I said, I didn't even need to say yes. I just was, of course, in it, and then later read a script. But what I heard was the movie he saw. And what was incredible, like no other experience I've had in my life, where your filmmaker is describing the film, and you don't see it yet, and it hasn't been born yet, and it's exactly the movie he's made, and it's exactly the journey that he promised me and Will and I, of collaboration, of inclusion, of discovery, of the deepest of vulnerability. It taught me so much as an actor, and to have your director not only be this extraordinary actor and filmmaker, but actually grab the camera and operate, so that when you're in these deepest moments of intimacy, instead of waiting, even when your director's right here, waiting for them to cut, to kind of come to you to describe an idea so that you go back in for another take, we're in the take, and he's operating, and so he's right next to me, and we would come up with ideas as the take was going on. And it really, I've said this before, but it did feel like we were not only making the film together, we were finding her together. It was sort of one organism. It was an amazing, amazing experience.
Yeah, I wanna ask you about the kind of trajectory of how Tess became the Tess that we see. But as you were describing, you guys have been talking a lot about the way that you made the film in the handheld and how you were right there. And I've been kind of struggling to like see it in my mind's eye. But as you were just describing it, I actually thought of the scene in Jay Kelly when Noah, playing the director, is right behind their two heads and he's kind of whispering. And he's like, okay, now put your hand in your hair, now this and that. And like it's suddenly now I'm seeing Bradley's face doing that.
Except in this case,
it's
Bradley. We were talking about this last night. Bradley is holding the camera, he's right here, and Will's right here. And I'm in the scene trying to see Will, so I have to put Bradley's hair behind his ear to see Will. So the three of us were literally acting and making the movie at all times together.
Incredible. So yeah, tell me how the character of Tess, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I can't remember the real life Tess. What is her name? Mel. Did you meet her like in the process of sort of finalizing the version of Tess that you were playing, or kind of how did it go? How did you guys, I guess, beef up who she was after you signed on to the version that we see here?
It wasn't based on Mel. It was beefed up just by the nature of Laura saying yes and then wanting to make a movie about, what happens if we, the day, why now, why this moment, it's the day that they decide to break up, and then what happens after. But Laura met with Mel and recited like their whole entire conversation, and it was Mel who talked to her about this moment when they were trying to pick because I was trying to find a way for them to have physical touch while they're apart. Like when you can be in a fight, or you could say, you're trying to distance yourself, but if you have to physically touch somebody and there's still so much there, I wanted that moment. And she was talking about lice, And I was like, oh, that's a great way, that's a great set piece for that. So that was completely inspired by your conversation with Mel.
Yeah, and they had that experience together in the middle of what they thought would be their breakup. I guess poor Mel didn't get to go with Peyton Manning to the club.
She was with her girlfriend.
Yeah. Tess got to go with Peyton Manning to the club. So there is that. But, you know, all the inspirations. I mean, my childhood is in Tess. Will's childhood is in Alex. And I would say, and yours. And our relationships, and our vulnerabilities. And, you know, it's an amazing thing to be directed by your friend who knows you so well that a strength you don't know you have is incorporated, and your flaws that are loved, even if I don't love them, are incorporated. So I see a side of myself I've never seen in a film, and I know it was born of what he was willing to kind of dare me to discover. With all its complexity and its subtlety, relationship is everything, right? It's our greatest teacher in so many ways. And I think that was the most exciting thing in the discovery of as she started to kind of be born, and all the people that helped support it, from, you know, Mel's experience to the amazing Gabby Reese, who's my dear friend, who, being an Olympic volleyball player, was such a great guide at understanding the emotional dynamics of different players. You know, what it is to be a striker and how that shows up in relationship or in parenting, and with Peyton, to understand what it means when you are the best at the game and you don't get to play anymore, no matter how much you are deeply involved in the game as a commentator or a coach. So, you know, all those discoveries were part of, I think, her growth, but at the end of the day, it was his knowing, his deep knowing of me, and kind of, you know, as we
really had a leg up that we know each other so well. I definitely don't think that we would have been able to cut to it so quickly and be able to, but that said, like, you can know somebody and then you're there and it's intense and there's a crew around. Like, I think back to that scene, it's a very quick moment when she's actually striking the ball, and, you know, the trust we had with each other. It was a very vulnerable thing, you know, because Laura doesn't play volleyball, I can say that.
Only in the movies,
That's okay,
guys.
I can say that, right? And that was a very challenging moment.
With incredible players, professional volleyball players.
But I felt like it was just you and I alone there, and, like, you know, you're standing there like, what's happening, you know? And really, we were able to just be able to be there for each other, which was really we wouldn't have been able to do that in such a short time. We shot this movie in 33 days. Like, there was no time. So to be able to cut to it so quickly and mine what we wanted to mine out of all these scenes was really due in part, if not all, because of how close we are in our personal lives with each other.
And